Hey guys, tonight we are setting out on a journey to the golden sands of 14th century Mali. You can almost feel the desert heat still clinging to your skin. The smell of wood smoke drifting from cooking fires, and the faint jingle of camel bells somewhere beyond the horizon. This is a world before smartphones, before cars, before anyone could complain about bad Wi-Fi, yet it's a place pulsing with trade, music, and ideas. Tonight, we're following the life of a man so wealthy that even 14th century chroniclers ran out of adjectives trying to describe him. Mansa Musa. You probably won't survive this world, between the sun, the snakes, and the fact that you have no idea how to manage a camel, but that's okay. Because all you have to do is listen and drift off. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand at the edge of Niani, the royal capital of Mali, your sandals sinking slightly into the packed earth road. The city is alive with color, brightly dyed fabrics, glinting metalwork, and the flash of gold jewelry catching the sun. Goats bleat somewhere near a market stall, and you can smell roasted millet wafting through the air. Here, young Musa grows up under the watchful eye of the court. Historians still argue whether Musa was born directly into the main royal line or into a cadet branch of the family. But either way, he was a prince with access to everything a future ruler might need: tutors, warriors, and an endless supply of lessons on how to keep allies happy and rivals nervous. Your day follows Musa as he wakes to the sound of drums calling the court to order. The palace compound is a walled complex of mud brick buildings painted in red and ochre, with wide courtyards perfect for morning assemblies. Musa is taught not just to fight but to calculate trade weights, memorize genealogies, and debate theology with traveling scholars. You might be tempted to sneak a nap in the shade, but Musa doesn't have that luxury. His schedule is packed tighter than your email inbox on Monday morning. Here's your first quirky tidbit. Some chronicles hint that royal children like Musa were given tiny gold dust pouches to wear around their necks, not only as symbols of status but also as a kind of early savings account. Imagine being a kid with literal gold dust allowance money, though good luck spending it when every merchant in town knows you're the prince and might just give you free figs anyway. Afternoons are spent watching caravans arrive from far-off places like Walata and beyond the Sahara. You watch as merchants unload salt slabs, copper ingots, and textiles, and you can see the boy Musa staring with wide eyes, already dreaming of what lies across the desert. Someone casually mentions Cairo or Mecca, and you can tell it lights a spark in him, though you have no idea how far that spark will carry him later in life. Evenings are for storytelling. Griots, court historians, sit around fires, their voices weaving together epics of kings past, reminding Musa of the power he might one day inherit. You sit nearby, lulled by the steady rhythm of the kora, that beautiful 21-stringed harp lute, and if you aren't careful, you might drift off right there on the palace floor. But before sleep, Musa walks the inner gardens with his mother, learning about plants with medicinal properties, baobab leaves for fevers, shea nuts for skin salves. It's a softer education to balance the harder lessons of politics. Historians still debate whether these early years were peaceful or tense with palace intrigue. But either way, the young prince learns quickly that power is something you prepare for long before you wear the crown. As the stars rise, you can feel the dry desert air cooling, a welcome relief after the blazing day. Fires crackle, shadows stretch across the compound, And somewhere in the distance, a hyena laughs, a reminder that the wild is never far away. You pull your cloak a little tighter. Tonight, Musa will dream of the world beyond Mali, and you're right there with him. Just beginning the long golden road of his life story. Morning light spills over the rooftops of Niani, and you find yourself standing once again near the palace training grounds, where young Musa is already at work. Today is not about swords or spears but about numbers and words. His tutors, patient, stern, and occasionally amused, gather him into a shaded courtyard. You sit cross-legged nearby, enjoying the faint breeze while he repeats long lists of trade goods, genealogies, and Islamic proverbs. Historians still argue whether Musa's early education was more Islamic or more rooted in the old Mande traditions. But whichever way it leaned, it clearly gave him a restless mind. He learns Arabic so he can read the Quran himself. But he also listens to local griots and their centuries-old epics. By nightfall, his head must feel like your phone storage after a month of downloading podcasts, packed, but still asking for more. Quirky fact of the day: some royal tutors reportedly used carved wooden boards for lessons, washing them clean after each day so the child could start fresh. Imagine the satisfaction of wiping away all your math homework with a splash of water, something modern students would definitely vote to bring back. As the seasons turn, Musa grows into a curious young man with an appetite for news of the world. Caravans bring him not just salt and gold but stories of Cairo's towering mosques, of the scholars of Fez, of the Kaaba at Mecca. Each tale stirs something inside him. You can almost see him fidgeting, the way you might when someone mentions a city you've always wanted to visit but can't quite get to yet. On some afternoons, Musa wanders into the outskirts of town to watch blacksmiths at work. Sparks fly, the smell of hot metal fills the air, and he asks 1,000 questions about tools and trade. The smiths grin and answer patiently. After all, it never hurts to have the future ruler on your side. Evenings are for relaxation, if you can call it that. Musa's education includes music, and you sit beside him as he plucks tentative notes on a ngoni, an early stringed instrument, while an older musician corrects him gently. The melody is soft, hypnotic, and if you close your eyes, you could almost fall asleep right there, with the desert cicadas humming backup vocals. But palace life is not all music and charm. Musa also learns about diplomacy by sitting quietly at his father's side during council meetings. The room is thick with incense and politics. Chiefs from distant provinces debate tax payments. Messengers deliver news of small skirmishes, and you try not to cough as smoke curls around you. This is where Musa learns the art of patience, how to let others talk, when to intervene, and when to nod solemnly as though you've already solved the problem in your head. Historians still debate whether Musa's temperament was naturally calm or carefully trained. But the result is the same. He grows into a man who seems to take everything in stride. Even the kind of disasters that would make most of us curl up under a blanket and refuse to answer emails. Late one night, you find Musa sitting under a baobab tree, staring at the stars. His servant approaches with a jug of milk, but Musa barely notices. You sit beside him, tracing the same constellations he sees, the crooked line of Orion's belt, the swoop of the Milky Way like spilled sugar. He whispers about wanting to see the world beyond the horizon. You nod, because you know where this is heading. That spark from last section is now a steady flame. Tomorrow will bring new lessons, new stories, and eventually, challenges that will push him far beyond the quiet nights of Niani. But for now, the air is cool, the stars are bright, and the young prince has time to dream of deserts, cities, and journeys yet to come. The day feels heavier somehow, And so does the mood around the palace. You can tell something big has happened before anyone even says a word. Musa is older now, nearly a man, and his tutors speak to him with a new level of formality. You're sitting in a shaded corner when the news finally reaches the court. The Mansa, Musa's predecessor, has vanished. The official story, as you overhear from servants whispering in the courtyard, is almost unbelievable. Historians still argue whether it was pure curiosity or political drama. But the ruler before Musa apparently set off with a fleet of ships to discover what lay beyond the Western Ocean. That's right, before Columbus. Before Portuguese navigators, Mali's king had the same, what's on the other side, impulse and actually did something about it. The fleet never returned. Some say they were swallowed by storms. Others claim they may have reached distant shores. The debate still goes on. But one thing is certain. The throne is now empty. This is the moment Musa steps into history. You can practically feel the weight of the crown being lowered onto his head. His title changes from prince to Mansa, king. And suddenly all those years of memorizing trade routes and sitting through boring council meetings make sense. He's no longer a spectator, he's in charge. Your quirky tidbit for this section? Musa reportedly took on the kingship while acting as regent at first. Meaning he was basically filling in until it became clear the old ruler wasn't coming back. Imagine getting the world's most stressful temp job and realizing it's permanent. Musa spends his first days as Mansa traveling through the palace grounds. Talking with officials, priests, and soldiers, you tag along, brushing against cool mud brick walls and smelling the faint aroma of millet porridge from the kitchens. At every stop, Musa asks questions about taxes, about caravan safety, about which provinces are restless. His calm, measured tone reassures everyone, and soon the palace feels stable again. In the evenings, Musa retreats to a quiet room lit by oil lamps, where scribes read aloud reports from the provinces. You sit nearby, tracing patterns in the sand with your finger while listening to news of grazing disputes, harvest yields, and the occasional bandit problem. Musa listens without interrupting, stroking his beard thoughtfully, though to be honest, his beard is still more awkward teenager patchy than majestic kingly. Historians still debate whether Musa's early rule faced rebellion or whether his steady hand prevented unrest before it began. Either way, the kingdom holds together under his leadership, and trade continues to flow. The gold mines keep producing, the salt caravans keep marching, and life in Mali feels prosperous, at least from where you're standing. But there is something else on Musa's mind. Late one night, after dismissing the council, he walks alone through the gardens, his sandals brushing against damp earth. You follow silently as he pauses to look at the stars again. His gaze is steady, thoughtful. You can almost hear his inner voice saying, "What next?" This quiet moment marks the turning point. Musa is no longer just inheriting a kingdom. He's starting to imagine what he might do with it, how he might expand it, enrich it, leave a mark that will echo long after his time. For you, standing there in the moonlight, it feels like you're at the very edge of history, watching a door swing open. When Musa returns to the palace, he does so with a straight back and a new sense of purpose. Tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow, the building of a legacy begins. The first rays of dawn filter through the palace courtyard, and you find Musa already awake, pacing with quiet energy. Today is about action, not waiting. You follow him as he calls together his generals and advisors, their faces serious but expectant. The air feels charged, like the moment before a summer storm. Musa's decision is clear. Mali will grow stronger, richer, and more secure under his rule. Historians still argue whether his campaigns were mainly defensive, meant to keep the trade routes safe, or whether Musa simply had the ambition to stretch Mali's borders as far as possible. Either way, you're about to watch the kingdom expand. You march with Musa's retinue as they head toward the edges of the empire. Through fields of millet that sway in the dry wind, past villages where children stop and stare as the royal procession passes. At night, you camp under the stars, eating roasted goat with spices that make your lips tingle. Musa sits by the fire, sketching plans in the sand, listening to scouts report on distant towns. He nods, occasionally asks a sharp question, then waves them away so he can think. Here's your quirky tidbit for tonight. Some chronicles claim Musa used brightly colored flags and drums to coordinate troop movements over long distances, turning warfare into something almost musical. Imagine trying to keep a straight face while your commander orders a cavalry charge by playing the equivalent of an ancient drum solo. Over the months, cities are fortified and new ones brought into the fold. You can practically see the caravan routes thickening with traffic, lines of camels carrying salt, slaves, spices, and above all, gold. Niani grows busier, its markets louder, its palace more crowded with emissaries and diplomats. Musa's dream is taking shape. Back in the capital, you stroll through the palace garden where new courtiers gather, eager to curry favor. The air smells of tamarind and warm earth, and you catch snippets of conversation about land grants and newly built wells. Musa is always thinking ahead, building mosques, strengthening defenses, and making sure that every province feels just enough of the king's presence to stay loyal. Historians still debate how personally Musa oversaw these projects, whether he was a hands-on ruler or delegated much of the work to trusted lieutenants. But from where you're standing, it feels like he is everywhere at once, one day inspecting city walls, the next listening to petitions, the next sending envoys to neighboring kingdoms. One evening, as the sun sets in a blaze of gold over the Niger River, Musa gathers his council in the open courtyard. You sit cross-legged on a woven mat, feeling the cool night breeze. Plans for future campaigns are laid out, but so are plans for peace, alliances sealed by marriages, treaties signed with neighbors. Musa understands that force can expand a kingdom, but only diplomacy can hold it together. As you leave the courtyard, you can't help but notice how alive the city feels. Torches flicker, music drifts from distant houses, and you hear the faint clink of gold dust being measured in small scales. This is the rhythm of a growing empire, and Musa is at the center of it, guiding it forward with steady hands. You stretch out near the palace walls, staring up at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the desert and the horizon, lies the rest of the world, and you can tell Musa is already thinking about how to connect Mali to it, not just with soldiers and merchants, but with something greater. Tomorrow, the palace will wake again to the sound of drums, and the building of Musa's vision will continue. But tonight, you let the desert quiet wash over you and drift toward sleep, knowing the story is only just beginning. You wake to the clatter of dishes and the chatter of servants hurrying across the courtyard. Today, you get a front row seat to Musa's palace life, not the grand councils and campaigns, but the quieter, stranger rhythms of the royal court. The morning begins with a meal, though calling it breakfast feels wrong when the spread includes roasted meats, spiced porridges, fresh figs, and bowls of honeyed milk. You sit cross-legged near Musa, inhaling the warm smell of millet bread as musicians play soft kora tunes in the background. Historians still argue whether Musa's palace meals were inspired by North African cuisine or strictly Mande traditions. But either way, the royal kitchen is a powerhouse. Dozens of cooks scurry about, balancing clay pots and shouting across smoky hearths. Your quirky tidbit of the day. Some accounts suggest that court meals were eaten from shared bowls. And everyone, including the Mansa, washed their hands in perfumed water before eating. Imagine a dinner party where the hand-washing ritual is as fancy as the dessert course. After the meal, court business begins. You trail behind Musa as he walks into the audience hall, a large open room shaded by carved beams. Petitioners kneel before him to plead cases about land disputes, caravan thefts, and even marriage quarrels. Musa listens with his usual calm expression, occasionally glancing toward his advisors. You notice that his sense of humor sometimes slips through. He raises an eyebrow when one petitioner's story becomes a little too dramatic. Like he's silently thinking, "Really? You expect me to believe that goat just wandered off by itself?" Midday is for ritual. Musa slips away to a private prayer room, and you hear the soft sound of water as he performs ablution before bowing in quiet devotion. The palace seems to pause while he prays. The corridors suddenly hushed except for the flutter of banners in the warm breeze. Later, the court springs back to life. You wander through the palace gardens, where servants trim fig trees and water flowers with big clay jugs. Musa joins you, enjoying a rare moment of leisure. A jester appears, doing a clumsy little dance that makes Musa laugh, a deep, warm sound that startles a few nearby birds. It's a reminder that even a king needs to unwind, just as you need to occasionally binge a silly show before bed. Historians still debate whether Musa kept a formal harem or if later writers exaggerated the size of his household. What's certain is that the palace was full of activity: wives, children, advisors, musicians, and scribes moving through its corridors like a living river. The scent of incense hangs in the air, mixed with the smell of drying leather scrolls and ink. By late afternoon, you find yourself in the stables, watching royal horses being brushed until they shine. Musa steps in to inspect them, nodding approvingly. A well-kept stable means ready couriers and swift news. And in a kingdom this large, news is as important as gold. As the sun begins to set, Musa walks to the highest point of the palace and gazes over Niani. You stand beside him, the air cooling as purple shadows stretch across the fields. Somewhere, a drumbeat starts up, calling the city to evening prayer. Below you, torchlights begin to twinkle like fallen stars. The day ends with music again, griots chanting genealogies, stringed instruments sighing into the night. The sound is hypnotic, wrapping around you like a soft blanket. Musa leans back, hands clasped behind his head. Satisfied, you can feel the rhythm of the court settling into a comfortable heartbeat. It's a world that moves slowly, deliberately, and tonight, you let yourself fall into that rhythm too. One quiet breath at a time. The morning is unusually lively when you step into the palace courtyard. Instead of the usual clatter of dishes, you hear music, soft flutes and the low hum of a chorus. Today is not a day for military councils or petitions. It is a day for celebrating knowledge and song. Musa is in a particularly good mood, and you can tell he has plans beyond simply ruling a kingdom. He wants to turn it into a place where learning thrives. You follow Musa to a shaded portico where scholars from across Mali, and from even farther afield, are gathered. They sit cross-legged on reed mats, writing on wooden tablets with ink that smells faintly of smoke. Historians still argue whether Timbuktu had already begun its golden age of scholarship under Musa's predecessors or whether Musa himself lit the match that set it ablaze. Either way, you are watching him fan those flames. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some sources say that books in Timbuktu were once traded for gold by weight, meaning a single manuscript might have been worth as much as a horse. You imagine trying to borrow a library book with a deposit that could bankrupt you if you forgot the due date. Musa encourages debate among the scholars, occasionally joining in with a thoughtful comment that makes them nod appreciatively. You watch one scholar excitedly draw diagrams in the dust about astronomy, explaining how stars could guide caravans safely across the desert at night. Another tells stories of distant lands, Egypt, Arabia, even rumors of cities across the sea. Musa listens, his face calm but his mind clearly racing. By midday, the palace echoes with song. Griots arrive with their koras and balafons, instruments that fill the air with a bright, rippling sound. Musa sits at the center of the gathering, tapping one hand in time with the rhythm. Children laugh, servants sway to the music, and even the guards seem to relax their stern faces. Historians still debate whether music at court was purely ceremonial or if Musa genuinely loved these performances. But from where you sit, he looks like someone who would happily stay here all afternoon if duties didn't call him away. Later in the day, Musa invites you to walk with him through the palace library. The room smells of parchment and ink, cool despite the heat outside. You see rows of scrolls and manuscripts stacked carefully in niches along the walls. Musa picks one up and hands it to a scribe to read aloud. Verses of poetry that speak of desert winds, love, and the passing of time. The words are slow and soft, and for a moment, it feels as though the entire world is holding its breath. Evening falls with the sound of drums calling the faithful to prayer. Afterward, Musa sits with a small group of scholars under the open sky. They speak of law, trade, and faith while you lie back in the sand, watching the Milky Way stretch overhead like spilled flour. This quiet moment becomes one of those memories that lingers with you, the flicker of lantern light, the murmur of low voices, the occasional burst of laughter from someone telling a clever joke. It's a reminder that learning, like music, is one of the great joys of life, even in a palace where gold seems to be everywhere. The true treasures are ideas. By the time you return to your sleeping mat, the music has faded, and the palace has gone still except for the chirping of insects. You close your eyes, the words of scholars still echoing softly in your mind, like the last notes of a lullaby. Morning comes with the call of distant drums, and you rise to find Musa already at work, conferring with his advisors. Today he talks not just about gold but about what gold can do. You follow him back to Niani, where plans are drawn for roads, new wells, and, most importantly, schools. Yes, schools. Because Musa believes that wealth isn't just for palaces and silk robes but for learning. Historians still argue whether Musa personally founded the University of Sankor in Timbuktu or simply expanded it. But there's no question he transformed the city into a center of learning. You ride north with him toward Timbuktu, the caravan winding like a lazy snake across the Sahel. The air is drier here, the grass thinner, and the horizon seems to go on forever. When you reach Timbuktu, the place is buzzing like a beehive. Traders unload salt slabs from Taudeni. Students rush with scrolls under their arms, and scholars debate under shaded courtyards. The smell is a mix of dust, leather, and ink, a strangely comforting scent, like the smell of a library on a warm day. Your quirky tidbit here: some of these scholars wrote in books made from imported paper so fine it was worth its weight in gold. Imagine paying a month's salary just to scribble lecture notes. You peer over a student's shoulder and see elegant Arabic script flowing across the page, each line a record of knowledge being captured before it could vanish into the desert air. Musa meets with the scholars, sitting cross-legged on mats as they discuss theology, astronomy, and law. You watch his face light up as he listens, It's the same glow he had in the treasury, but warmer, softer. Gold can build a wall, but education can build a mind. And Musa clearly understands which one lasts longer. Historians still debate just how many manuscripts Timbuktu's libraries once held. Some estimates run as high as 700,000. You picture them stacked from floor to ceiling. A paper mountain of wisdom just waiting to be climbed. Musa spends days here, funding salaries for scholars and bringing in architects to repair and expand the mosques. You watch workers shape mud bricks in the sun, their hands moving in rhythm as they build the famous Jingaribur Mosque. Its walls rise slowly, like something growing out of the earth itself, crowned with wooden beams that jut out like ribs. At night, you lie on the roof of a guest house and stare at the stars. The air is so clear you feel you could pluck a star from the sky and drop it into your pocket. Timbuktu hums below you, a city alive with conversation, debate, and the scratching of pens on paper. You realize this place will still matter long after Musa is gone, because he's turned it into something bigger than himself. And yet, as you fall asleep, you sense Musa is still not satisfied. Gold and books are not enough. There's a restlessness in him, a desire to show the world what Mali can do. He wants not just to rule, but to be remembered. When he finally speaks of it the next morning, his voice is calm but determined. A pilgrimage to Mecca. Not just any pilgrimage. A journey so grand that the world will talk about it for centuries. You feel a chill even in the heat of the desert. Something tells you the world has no idea what's about to hit it. You wake to a dazzling sunrise spilling gold over the Niger River, which feels like foreshadowing because today is all about gold, Mali's glittering heart. You walk with Musa through the marketplace, and everywhere you look, there are signs of wealth. Merchants weighing gold dust on tiny brass scales, jewelers hammering delicate bangles, and traders haggling over prices in a dozen languages. The air smells of dust and spices, and you swear you can almost taste the metallic tang of wealth in the breeze. Historians still argue whether Mali truly produced half the world's gold during Musa's reign. But even the most cautious estimates place it among the richest empires of the medieval world. You watch as tax collectors gather their share from caravan leaders, small leather pouches filled with dust so fine it looks like glitter. Some of it goes to the palace treasury, some to paying soldiers and building projects, and some is stored away for the grand plans Musa hasn't yet revealed. Your quirky tidbit today: gold dust wasn't just for coins. In some accounts, people sprinkled it on their hair and clothing during festivals, turning entire streets into glittering rivers of gold. Imagine showing up to a party literally sparkling head to toe, and then realizing everyone else is sparkling too. You trail Musa to the royal treasury, which is less a room and more a fortress. Inside, you find jars of gold dust sealed with wax, nuggets stacked in neat rows, and even gold-plated tools for weighing and measuring. The air is cool and dry, smelling faintly of clay and metal. Musa inspects everything carefully, running his fingers through a bowl of gold granules as though testing its purity by touch. Later that afternoon, you join a caravan heading out from Niani. The line of camels stretches so far you can't see the end, their soft footfalls kicking up lazy clouds of sand. Each camel carries goods: salt, ivory, kola nuts, and, of course, gold. The drivers sing softly as they walk, rhythmic chants that keep the pace steady. Historians still debate whether these caravans were state-controlled or privately run under royal license, but they clearly form the veins and arteries of Musa's empire, pumping wealth in and out like blood. As you march alongside, you feel the sun beating down and imagine how exhausting it must be to do this week after week. Musa doesn't complain. He's busy asking questions, making sure prices are fair, routes are safe, and taxes are properly collected. When night falls, the caravan halts and tents rise like a small city in the desert. You sit near the fire as a merchant tells tales of distant ports where gold from Mali is exchanged for glass beads, fine cloth, and even books. Musa listens, his expression thoughtful. You can tell he's imagining all the ways Mali's gold can connect this kingdom to the rest of the known world. Before you sleep, you notice Musa kneeling on a prayer mat, the firelight casting a warm glow over his face. Behind him, the stacked sacks of gold look almost unreal, glimmering in the dark like captured sunlight. You close your eyes, lulled by the camel bells and the thought that you are literally surrounded by treasure. Tomorrow, Musa's plans will grow even bigger. You can feel it. The gold is no longer just wealth, it's becoming a tool. A way to leave a mark that no desert wind can erase. The preparations begin almost immediately. You watch as couriers sprint out of Niani, carrying Musa's orders to every corner of the empire. It feels less like planning a trip and more like preparing for a small-scale migration. Musa is not a man to travel light, and certainly not to Mecca, the holiest city of Islam. Soon the capital hums like a disturbed anthill. Gold dust is measured and packed into leather bags. Camels are brought from far-off grazing grounds, and slaves and servants are organized into neat columns. Historians still argue over just how many people made up this legendary caravan. Some say 60,000. Others insist it must have been more modest. You watch the numbers swell until it feels like the entire kingdom might just get up and march east with him. Your quirky tidbit. A few clever courtiers start sewing gold dust into their clothes, turning their tunics into literal treasure chests. You suspect it makes sitting down very uncomfortable. But hey, fashion has always been a little impractical. The route eastward is no casual stroll. You mount a camel and sway back and forth as the caravan lurches forward across the Sahel. The horizon rippling with heat, Musa rides near the front, wrapped in fine robes that shimmer in the sun like he's wearing sunlight itself. Day after day, the caravan pushes on. The air tastes of dust, and the sound of thousands of feet, human and animal, becomes a kind of lullaby. You pass villages where children gape at the endless line of travelers, merchants who cheer when they see the gold-laden pack animals, and musicians who break into song as the Sultan approaches. Every so often, the caravan stops, and Musa gives out handfuls of gold to the poor. He does it with a calm generosity that makes it seem like he's giving away pebbles, not precious metal. You feel a pang of guilt watching the recipients' stunned faces. This one gesture will probably change their lives forever. You cross rivers where crocodiles eye the caravan suspiciously, dunes where the sand burns your ankles, and dusty plains where thorn bushes snag your road. The caravan becomes a moving city, complete with cooks, guards, and prayer leaders. At night, campfires flicker like stars scattered across the ground, and the sound of drums echoes into the cool desert air. Historians still debate whether Musa's massive giveaway of gold along the way caused inflation in Cairo and Mecca. You can't help imagining Cairo's money changers fainting as the price of gold collapses in front of them, like watching the stock market drop while holding a bag full of gold coins. Weeks turn into months, and the landscape slowly changes. The flat grasslands give way to harsher desert stretches, and you finally feel the shift into the true Sahara. The sky here feels enormous, swallowing you whole. The air grows drier, the sun harsher, but the caravan presses on, a ribbon of determination stretching toward Mecca. At last, one morning, you see the glint of minarets far in the distance. The call to prayer drifts on the wind, And suddenly the caravan seems to stand taller. Mecca is near. Your heart races a little. You've traveled halfway across the known world for this moment. And you're about to witness one of the most spectacular religious journeys in history. As the caravan enters the holy city, you feel a hush fall over everyone. Musa dismounts, removes his sandals, and steps softly toward the Kaaba. You follow, your feet sinking into the warm sand, your ears filled with murmured prayers. Whatever jokes you might have had about gold-sewn tunics and camel smells vanish here. This is sacred ground. But Musa has brought more than devotion. His gold flows like water, endowing mosques, paying debts, freeing prisoners, and dazzling local merchants. The world has never seen a pilgrimage like this. And you have the strange sense that, somewhere back in Mali, the scales of history are tilting just a little because of what's happening here. You linger in Mecca for weeks, watching the city slowly adapt to Musa's presence. It's like a festival that never ends. Musa commissions new wells, repairs for mosques, and gifts of gold that make even seasoned merchants blink twice. You hear whispers that the price of gold has dropped so far that some traders are actually complaining about having too much of it, an absurd problem you never thought you'd hear. Historians still argue whether Musa fully understood the economic chaos he was causing or whether he simply thought generosity was its own reward. Either way, his name spreads like wildfire. You overhear pilgrims from distant lands muttering about the King of Gold, who has turned Mecca into the world's most generous marketplace. One evening, as you sit near a quiet courtyard, you catch a glimpse of Musa deep in prayer, his forehead pressed to the ground. In that moment, all the gold, camels, and fanfare seem to fade away. This is a man fulfilling a spiritual duty, and you feel the sincerity radiating from him. Your quirky tidbit. Some locals start sketching Musa and his entourage in the margins of trade records, meaning the first fan art of the Malian king might actually be doodles drawn by bored clerks. You wonder how many of those sketches survived and whether Musa would have found them flattering. Eventually, the caravan begins to turn homeward. You feel a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because the desert crossing will finally end. Dread because you suspect life back in Mali will never be the same after this. The trip back is slower, partly because the caravan is now weighed down with gifts from foreign rulers, partly because the excitement has worn off and the desert feels a little less magical. But there are surprises. In Cairo, Musa negotiates with the Mamluk authorities, impressing them with his wealth and diplomacy. He even recruits scholars, architects, and poets to return with him to Mali. You ride alongside them as they join the caravan. Their faces a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. After all, they're heading to what, for them, is the very edge of the known world. By the time you re-enter the Sahel, the caravan looks like a floating university, scholars debating as they ride, architects sketching new mosque plans in the sand during rest stops, and poets composing verses about the journey. The air buzzes with ideas. You notice Musa rides more thoughtfully now. The gleam in his eye hasn't dulled, but there's a weight to his shoulders, as though he knows that with all this fame comes expectation. The world has seen Mali's gold. Now it will want to see what Mali does next. Historians still debate just how much this single pilgrimage raised Mali's global profile. But you can feel it in the way people react to the caravan on the return journey. They bow lower, speak more carefully, and look at Musa as though he's not just a king but something closer to a living legend. When you finally approach Niani again, the city erupts in celebration. Drums thunder, women ululate, and children run ahead of the caravan shouting about gold in Mecca. Musa dismounts, embraces his family, and thanks the crowd. But you notice he does not linger on ceremony. He's already talking to his advisors. Already planning what comes next. Night falls, and you sit by the river. Exhausted but strangely exhilarated. You've just been part of one of history's most famous journeys. And the air itself seems to buzz with possibility. You suspect that Mali's golden age is only just beginning. And Musa is about to make sure no one in the world can ever forget his name. The next morning, you wake to the sound of hammers and chisels. Musa has wasted no time. Construction projects have begun across Niani and beyond. Architects from Cairo sketch out plans for new mosques, schools, and palaces. Their parchment spread across tables like maps of a new future. You lean over one drawing and see the outline of a grand structure that will soon rise in Timbuktu, the Jingariber Mosque. Designed by a man Musa personally brought back with him. Historians still argue whether Musa's architectural campaign was purely religious devotion or also a display of royal power. But either way, the results are breathtaking. Within months, mud brick walls climb skyward. Carved wooden beams are slotted into place, and new wells are dug so that students, merchants, and travelers will never thirst. Your quirky tidbit. Some workers begin pressing their handprints into the drying bricks as a kind of signature. Hundreds of years later, those prints might still be there. A ghostly high five from the past. You travel with Musa to Timbuktu and watch as the city transforms before your eyes. The once dusty trade post now teems with students flocking to its madrasas. Merchants unloading goods, and scholars teaching under shady arcades. The hum of learning is everywhere, quills scratching, voices reciting, the occasional shout of debate as two scholars argue over whether a particular hadith is authentic. Musa seems more animated here than anywhere else. He walks among the scholars, asking questions, listening carefully, and then endowing more stipends. You swear you see him smile when a teacher corrects him on a point of theology. He actually likes being challenged. Trade expands as well. The caravan routes are safer, thanks to Musa's guards, and goods from across Africa and the Mediterranean pour into Mali. You watch a shipment of Moroccan books being unloaded next to copper from Takeda and cola nuts from the forested south. Niani begins to feel like the center of the world. Historians still debate whether Musa deliberately positioned Mali as a hub of Islamic scholarship or whether this was a happy side effect of his love for learning. But the result is undeniable. Timbuktu becomes a beacon for knowledge seekers from as far away as Cairo and Fez. One evening, you sit on the flat roof of a house, listening to students chant their lessons under the moonlight. The desert night is cool, and the stars look close enough to touch. You imagine a future student, centuries from now, poring over these same texts and feeling just as small, just as inspired. Musa passes by and pauses to look up at the sky with you. Gold can buy bricks, he murmurs, but only wisdom builds a kingdom. You nod, not sure if he's speaking to you or to the stars. And yet, beneath all the prosperity, you sense the growing weight of Musa's responsibilities. He has shown the world Mali's greatness. Now he must keep that greatness alive. You suspect that his biggest challenges are yet to come, and the golden years might not stay golden forever. Months turn into years, and you notice that Musa walks a little slower now. His beard flecked with more gray, but his mind is sharper than ever. You find him late at night with maps spread before him, planning trade routes and debating tax rates with his advisors. He's not just a king anymore, he's the architect of an empire. Historians still argue whether Musa's later policies were about consolidating power or about sustaining prosperity for his people. But you can see him trying to balance both. He tightens the administration, appoints governors to distant provinces, and ensures that caravan routes are patrolled. Even in the remote copper mines of Takeda, workers now speak Musa's name with respect, sometimes fear. Your quirky tidbit. One provincial governor sends Musa a giraffe as a gift. And you have to admit, watching a royal procession suddenly halt to deal with a very confused giraffe is one of the funnier moments of the reign. The animal becomes something of a celebrity in Niani, with children following it around like it's the latest pop star. Trade reaches new heights. Salt caravans arrive like clockwork. Copper and ivory flow north. And gold continues to pour from the ground like the earth itself is conspiring to keep Mali rich. You stand in the marketplace one afternoon, hearing half a dozen languages at once: Songhai, Arabic, Berber, even a little Portuguese from early coastal traders. The air is thick with the smell of spices and roasted meat. And you feel as though the whole world is passing through this city. Musa invests heavily in education, bringing even more scholars to Timbuktu. The libraries expand so rapidly that scribes complain about running out of shelving space. Historians still debate whether Musa's court commissioned official chronicles, but you like to imagine some tired scribe hunched over a lamp, writing the very words that would one day inspire future historians to piece together this golden age. Not everything is peaceful. You hear whispers of rival kingdoms testing Mali's borders, raiding parties that need to be repelled, and the occasional rebellion that must be crushed. Musa handles these with swift efficiency, sending well-armed cavalry that thunder across the savannah like rolling storms. You can almost feel the ground shake as they ride out. Still, the prosperity holds. The festivals grow grander, with musicians singing of Musa's pilgrimage and dancers reenacting the journey in elaborate costume. You notice that the younger generation sees Musa not just as a king but as a legend. A living story they get to grow up inside. One evening, as the city sleeps, you wander to the riverbank. The moonlight glimmers off the water, and you realize you're living in a rare moment of balance. Mali is strong, wealthy, and at peace, for now. You wonder how long this balance can last, because history rarely lets golden ages sit undisturbed forever. When you find Musa the next morning, he seems lost in thought too. Empires rise, he says softly, but they also fade. What we build must outlive us. You feel a pang of melancholy. He is already thinking about what will happen after he is gone. And you realize the story you're part of is slowly approaching its twilight. You sense a change in the air. Musa still rules, but his days are quieter now, filled less with grand processions and more with careful counsel. He walks through Timbuktu one last time with you, inspecting the libraries and madrasas he funded. Students bow as he passes, their faces glowing in lamplight. And for a moment, you see the pride soften his features. Historians still argue over exactly when Musa's health began to decline, but you notice he tires more easily now. He spends long hours in prayer, often at dawn when the city is still cloaked in blue shadow. You sit near him sometimes, listening to the quiet rustle of his robe as he kneels, and you feel the weight of a man preparing himself for the inevitable. Your quirky tidbit. Musa reportedly had a special seat built near the mosque so he could watch scholars debate even when he was too tired to join them. It was essentially a royal, front-row seat, proof that his love of learning never faded, even in his final years. Administration becomes more focused on succession. Musa summons his sons and counselors, discussing which of them is best suited to rule. You can almost taste the tension in the air. Succession planning is delicate, and no one wants to say the wrong thing. Meanwhile, the empire still hums along. Caravans arrive and depart, merchants haggle in the market, and the Jingariber Mosque calls worshippers to prayer. Mali's golden age is not over yet. But you can feel history beginning to shift under your feet, like the first tremor before a storm. Historians still debate whether Musa voluntarily stepped aside or ruled until the very end. But you witness him slowly withdrawing from daily politics, leaving more decisions to his chosen successor. There's a sadness to it, but also relief. Musa has been carrying the empire on his shoulders for decades, and even the strongest back must rest. One evening, as the harmattan wind sweeps dust across the city, Musa invites you to sit with him by the fire. He speaks softly about his pilgrimage, his scholars, and his hope that Mali will remain a center of learning long after he is gone. You notice he never speaks of gold anymore. Perhaps he has come to see that gold was never the real treasure, it was always the ideas, the books, the minds he gathered together. When he rises to leave, you catch a final glimpse of him silhouetted against the stars, his robe flapping gently in the desert breeze. He looks smaller now, but somehow more human, and that makes him even more extraordinary. You lie awake that night, listening to the distant sound of drumming, and wonder what tomorrow will bring. Musa's story is nearing its final pages, but something tells you that his legacy is just beginning to write itself across the world. The news comes quietly, almost gently, as if the entire empire is holding its breath. Musa has passed. You are there when the first mournful drumbeats begin, rolling through the night air like distant thunder. In Niani, the city slows to a hush. Markets close, prayers are whispered, and candles flicker in windows as if trying to guide his soul onward. Historians still argue over the exact year of Musa's death. Some place it in the late 1330s, others in the early 1340s, but everyone agrees it marked the end of an era. You feel it in your bones as you stand outside the palace. The golden age of Mali just lost its brightest star. Your quirky tidbit: in some villages, children reportedly played games in which they pretended to be the king of gold, handing out pebbles as if they were treasure. Even in Greece, Musa had become myth, a story children told to keep him alive. The funeral is not a spectacle of gold but of reverence. Thousands gather as prayers are recited, and the air carries the smell of incense and desert wind. You notice that no one speaks loudly, every sound is softened, as though the world itself has muffled its voice. In the days that follow, life in Mali resumes, but nothing feels quite the same. Musa's son takes the throne, and the transition is remarkably smooth, a testament to how carefully Musa prepared for this moment. The caravans still travel, the scholars still teach, but now, whenever his name is spoken, it carries an extra weight. Like a prayer, historians still debate whether Mali reached its absolute peak during Musa's reign or in the years immediately after. But you can feel that his influence continues to ripple outward. The libraries of Timbuktu keep growing, and travelers still arrive from distant lands, drawn by tales of the king who flooded Mecca with gold. One evening, you walk through the marketplace and overhear a merchant telling Musa's story to a wide-eyed child. He embellishes a little, claiming the camels' saddlebags overflowed so much that gold dust trailed behind them, but you don't correct him. Legends deserve a little sparkle. You sit by the riverbank again, the same spot where you once watched caravans depart, and let the memory of Musa settle over you like the evening breeze. The empire is quieter now, but in that quiet, you sense the enduring strength of what he built: roads, mosques, schools, and a dream of a Mali that could outlast him. And as the stars blink awake above you, you realize that maybe Musa's greatest achievement wasn't the gold he gave away, but the story he left behind, the one you are now carrying. Time moves gently now, like the slow current of the Niger. You stay in Mali to watch what becomes of Musa's legacy. and it's as if the kingdom itself is trying to live up to his memory. Timbuktu flourishes, its libraries expanding until they rival the great collections of Cairo. Scholars continue to debate law, astronomy, and philosophy late into the night, and caravans keep threading their way across the Sahara, carrying salt, copper, ivory, and books. Historians still argue whether this period was truly a continuation of Musa's golden age or the beginning of its gradual decline. You feel the tension, as though the empire is balancing on a knife's edge. Prosperity is still here, but holding it together takes effort, more than it did when Musa was alive to inspire everyone with his presence. Your quirky tidbit. One ambitious merchant commissions a set of golden sandals in Musa's honor and then discovers they're far too heavy to walk in. You watch him clomp awkwardly across the market square before giving up and displaying them in his shop window like an art piece. Even so, the empire keeps humming. Envoys from North Africa and even Europe arrive. Curious about this distant land of gold, you meet a cartographer who begs to sketch maps of Mali, saying the Europeans are desperate to know where this kingdom is. You smile, thinking how Musa would have loved that. His name and his empire finally drawn onto the world's mental map. And slowly, you start to feel your own journey coming to an end. The roads you've traveled, the nights under desert stars, the endless rhythm of camel steps, all of it has led here. You sit one last time by the river in Niani, watching the water slide past, carrying with it the reflections of the city Musa built. The wind picks up, warm and dry, carrying the distant sound of chanting students. The air smells of dust, wood smoke, and possibility. You realize that even though Musa is gone, his story is still very much alive. Every book copied in Timbuktu, every caravan setting out for the salt mines, every student learning to read by lamplight is part of what he left behind. You lie back in the grass and stare at the stars. The same stars Musa once gazed at. Somewhere out there, his story has already traveled beyond Mali, carried by traders and pilgrims and scholars who will speak his name for centuries. And in that moment, you understand why you came here, not just to watch the gold shine, but to feel the weight of a life that changed the world. So now, as the night deepens, let your breathing slow with the river's steady flow. Imagine the desert stretching out around you, quiet and cool under the stars, the last embers of a campfire glowing softly in the distance. The sound of drums fades to a gentle heartbeat. The city behind you a warm, sleeping presence. Picture the library of Timbuktu, its shelves heavy with manuscripts, each one a whisper from the past. The lamps inside flicker, casting long shadows, as if the books themselves are breathing. Somewhere, a student yawns and sets down his pen, the night finally catching up with him. Let your body sink deeper into the quiet. The way sand slowly swallows a footprint. The worries of today slip away, carried off like gold dust on a soft breeze. The empire is safe for now. The roads are clear, and the stars overhead promise another dawn. Close your eyes and rest, knowing that you've walked beside a king, crossed a desert, and stood beneath the gates of Mecca. The story is complete. The caravan has returned, and all that remains is stillness. Sleep well, traveler.